member on the House Ways and Means Committee and serves as the ranking member on the Subcommittee on Tax Policy and has been a leader in the fight against international corporate tax avoidance. So thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much to this institute for once again delving into the complexities of an important public policy issue. Each of these three experts that we've had the good opportunity to hear this afternoon have previously offered their valuable insights to Congress. Unfortunately, the Republican majority didn't listen to them very well. And while Professor Kaiser has been very professional and generous in discussing the process, as many of you know, in the House of Representatives, we had not one representative from academia or business, and certainly no one with the courage in the administration to come forward and answer questions once this bill was out there to look at it and explore it in anything like the depth we've had today. In fact, there wasn't as much time as I'm going to spend in this brief summary focused on any of the issues in this tax bill, and that's why we have the monstrosity that we've got. Professor Kaiser referred to the Congressional Budget Office CBO recent report, its 10-year outlook. And that report specifically, and I quote, said that by locating more tangible assets abroad, a corporation is able to reduce the amount of its taxable income. Similarly, by locating fewer tangible assets in the United States, a corporation can increase the amount of U.S. income that can be deducted from its income. Together, the provisions may increase a corporation's incentive to locate tangible assets abroad. In plain English, what I think that means is, why would you want to make new investments in plant and equipment here in America when you can pay so much less in taxes, maybe nothing, if you build that plant and equipment abroad? The disparity in the tax rates that they've described, and you've heard them use the acronym, is the Global Intangible Low Tax Income. And I can't think of a more appropriate acronym for it than GILTY. Because this Republican majority and Trump are guilty of something that's really false, misleading, and deceptive advertising overall, but it has the effect of providing a giant incentive for outsourcing jobs and exporting a revenue that ought to be in the Treasury. It represents a total reversal of the position that President Trump took back during the campaign, but of course that's nothing unusual. One measure of the scope of these incentives, I think, is just in dollars and cents. Professor Clausing testified in meetings that we had that were talking about $100 billion estimated every year that was lost under the old regime. And that was from the refusal, despite our repeated efforts over many years, for Republicans to do anything about it, like the massive number of inversions that we had. You would think that any true reform would raise a good bit of revenue by closing the loopholes that permit that $100 billion a year to escape. But in fact, if you exclude the boondoggle called repatriation, the international tax provisions that we're talking about didn't raise any money under this bill. They lost revenue. And that's a good summary of what occurred. Another measure of it is what Professor Kaiser put up on the board, and I would just underline it a little bit, and that is CBO coming out and saying how much money that was earned right here, how much in profits that was earned right here in the United States gets written off through various shenanigans to places where they don't have to pay any taxes on it. $235 billion every year. That's an incredible figure. Yes, I'm not too worried that we'll ever get it to zero, and I understand the reasons why we might not want it at zero, but think about that. $235 billion of what may largely be tax-free income on profits that were earned within the United States through things like money transfer pricing and earnings stripping and other kinds of gimmicks. And of course, that sleight of hand, which is paper only or on computer only, does not even get to the specific incentives that were added to this bill that encourage the exporting of jobs. There's not any one bill that can solve these problems. In fact, as I went through the footnotes of your testimony to the Senate committee, which I thought were very helpful since the bill, there are so many steps that could be taken to resolve this. I simplified, perhaps oversimplified all of it into a bill that I appreciate some of the groups here have endorsed and a number of my colleagues have joined, called the No Tax Breaks for Outsourcing Act, HR 5108. And while I don't have an official score from Joint Tax as to how much it would save, it's clear from the experts we've heard today and from what CBO said that the door is wide open to continued offshore tax dodging. The bill that I propose would level the playing field, so we wouldn't be picking winners and losers between multinationals and companies that are mostly domestic oriented. We wouldn't advantage Pfizer over Davila Pharmacy on the west side of San Antonio that I represent and say one gets these huge breaks and the other pays the statutory rate. And in the course of that, we would incentivize more jobs here and not abroad. Of course, the No Tax Breaks for Outsourcing Act has no chance whatsoever of being approved in this Congress. But I'm convinced change is coming, and that it's forums like this that set the groundwork and the understanding for those of you who will be back explaining this to others about what's at stake here. And it is important for us to understand it, to lay down a marker, to look for every opportunity we can to advance these complex issues and put them in simple terms that folks back home can understand. I think even some of the Democrats, particularly on the committees involved, that have been a little reluctant to deal with international taxes in the past, have got reason after this law became effective to reconsider their position. Because now that we have made such a dramatic cut in corporate tax rates, way down to 20%, there's much less justification for all of the tax dodges that have been kept in here and added to that encourage outsourcing and encourage really a raid on the Treasury. Prior to the new law's adoption, we were right about at the average of the developed OECD countries in terms of effective tax rates. But we made this dramatic reduction in what is now apparently going to be a race to the bottom in terms of corporate tax rates, instead of the industrialized countries, the OECD, which tried to do a few modest things about this, working together to see that we don't have more and more stateless income. As you've heard, in addition to the half off or less tax on profits earned abroad, the new law exempts from U.S. tax entirely a 10% return on tangible investments made overseas. In other words, there's a direct incentive to not make it in America, but to make it somewhere else. As we consider corrections legislation in the Ways and Means Committee, which may or may not get any kind of public hearing, this is a place to focus on the consequences of international tax dodging and to explore the various phony promises that were made to advance this tax law. And I would just close in touching on those because I think they really bring it home to people around the country. You know that we've heard so much about who'd be the winners and that this was all about the middle class. Indeed, when I met and a group of us met with President Trump, he assured us that he wouldn't get a dime out of it. The administration claimed that every American family would get an average of $4,000 in additional income this year. And that wasn't even enough for Secretary Mnuchin. He said it would go up to $4,500. So I think the message we need to be getting out, and CWA did this early on, everyone needs to be asking, where's my $4,000? Where's my $4,500? Because they won't find it in their pockets this year. And all that bragging the administration has done about the bonuses, I think Rosa referred to this in her opening. 20 years at Walmart for $1,000, that's a lot of greeting and a lot of packing. But in fact, a recent study shows that 2/3 of Americans didn't even do as well as those 20-year Walmart folks. They don't report getting any increase in compensation whatsoever. as a result of this bill. So they're a long way from their $4,500. What we have then from the administration in short are more empty promises, more false and misleading advertising of this, more outsourcing, more corporate tax evasion, and huge deficits that will have the impact of threatening and providing excuses for those who want to weaken Medicare, weaken Social Security, undermine, they're already making these arguments now in talking about rescissions, other vital public investments that could make America more competitive through our educational system and upgrading the skills of our workforce and having a competitive infrastructure system. All those things are jeopardized when you add trillions of dollars of additional debt, additional red ink, and it is the people back home, the ones that are struggling to get up the economic ladder, who need a hand, who need to retrain. Those are the folks that are the real tragedy of this Republican tax bill. So I look forward to continuing to work with these excellent experts and with EPI and so many others of you who are gathered to try to see that we get a little true tax justice, because we've got none under this bill. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to say thank you to Representative DeLauro, who opened, and Representative Doggett, who closed, and to our fantastic panel of experts, and thank you all for coming. Have a good day.